Today we're going to talk about our new Middle Eastern war and what it means for Americans moving forward. And I've got two interviews from this week. I speak with Senator Tina Smith about her confrontation with Republican Senator Mike Lee after he mocked Democrats who'd been assassinated, and Democratic nominee for New Jersey Governor Mikey Sherrill about what she'll do if and when Trump targets her blue state. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. The United States, it seems, is now at war, as Donald Trump announced a U.S. attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, which means that one of two things happens now. One, Iran takes these attacks lying down, doesn't retaliate, and we carry on in a period of peace and prosperity. Or Iran does seek retaliation, and our military bases overseas become immediate targets. They block our ability to be able to get oil from the Middle East, and oil prices surge in the United States. There's a whole menu of options that they could take in terms of retaliation. We might also see Iran's allies, China and Russia, seek to get involved. So it's obviously anybody's guess what happens next. But one thing is abundantly clear. Donald Trump sold his supporters a bill of goods by pretending that he was the anti-war candidate on the ballot. Here is just a small sampling of those promises.
We're rebuilding our military stronger than ever before, and we are not going to deplete it again on stupid, senseless, endless wars. World War III has never been closer than it is right now. We need to clean house of all of the warmongers and America last globalists and the deep state. I am the president who delivers peace. I was the first president in decades who didn't start a war. But I stand here today, and I'm the only candidate who can make this promise. I will prevent, and very easily, World War III, very easily. These globalists want to squander all of America's strength, blood, and treasure, chasing monsters and phantoms overseas. In addition, there must also be a complete commitment to dismantling the entire globalist neocon establishment that is perpetually dragging us into endless wars, pretending to fight for freedom and democracy abroad.
And of course, we are now fewer than 6 months into Trump's presidency, and he attacks Iran. If Trump had a mandate when he came into office, it was peace. The official GOP Twitter account literally dubbed Trump and Vance the, quote, pro-peace ticket. Here's RFK Jr. echoing that claim.
If you want to avoid nuclear war, I strongly urge you to vote for Donald Trump. In fact, I would go so far as to say that a vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for nuclear war.
Here's Tulsi Gabbard also echoing that sentiment.
Here is the choice that we have. A vote for Kamala Harris is a vote for Dick Cheney, and it's a vote for war, more war, likely World War III and nuclear war. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for a man who wants to end wars, not start them.
And I mean, it goes on and on. Again, a mandate for peace that has been obliterated. Unless, of course, you're of the mind that Iran's just going to dutifully accept the attack and refuse to retaliate, which flies in the face of common sense. And also this statement that was put out on Iranian state TV saying, quote, every American citizen or military in the region is now a target. The same people who spent the last decade wailing about Benghazi just put every single American in the Middle East at risk. Of course, if and when that attack comes, something tells me that Republicans in Congress and the Senate aren't going to hold a Hillary Clinton-style hearing because it's fine when Trump does it. But this is what Trump does and what Republicans empower him to get away with. He runs as the peace candidate and immediately plunges us into war. Just like he vowed to lower costs and instead sent them surging thanks to his trade war, vowed to protect earned benefits and immediately moved to cut them, vowed law and order and instantly pardoned 1,500 January 6th insurrectionists. And look, I'm not here to say I told you so because while that might feel good, it doesn't get us anywhere. So my message to everybody out there who bought the bill of goods that Trump sold them is that this is a Republican Party that has nothing but contempt for you. Your vote is not a contract based on campaign promises, but rather a vehicle for Republicans to consolidate power for themselves. This is what happens when you entrust the GOP with majorities. Do not make the same mistake again. As we are right now in the horrific aftermath of this senseless and tragic shooting where State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark were killed, and also Democratic State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette were shot and are recovering right now. And this was all at the hands of a gunman who posed as a police officer and basically entered these legislators' homes in order to assassinate them. And that was immediately followed by Senator Mike Lee of Utah effectively becoming the main character on the internet this weekend, because he used the opportunity not to mourn their deaths or speak out against the senseless violence, but instead to post a couple of tweets onto Twitter, and I'm going to put them right here on the screen. One says, "Nightmare on Wall Street," and the next one says, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way." And so that was followed today by news that you had actually confronted Mike Lee. So can you explain first and foremost what you discussed with him when you spoke with him?
Well, so I come back to Washington after having experienced just this huge tragedy, a personal tragedy, because Melissa Hortman and John Hoffman are both friends of mine. And to know that Melissa and her husband were gunned down at their doorsteps by this assassin who was impersonating a police officer, we have been grappling with the reality of that. And it's so painful. And of course, here we have Mike Lee in the United States Senate posting this horrible picture and this terrible tweet. And I just feel like so often we respond to one another on social media. And I wanted to look him in the eye and tell him what I thought and how it made me and so many other Minnesotans feel that he had done this. And so I'm waiting for him. I'm trying to track him down. And I kind of honestly have to chase after him a bit because he is, doing that old thing of talking on the phone. And so I chased him down into a room where the Republicans were about to have a caucus meeting and pulled him out. And I told him, I said, "I want you to know what you did is you put a picture of the man who killed my friend. And then you said, this is what happens. And think about the consequences of that." I wanted him to think about those consequences and what it means. And what it means not just to me, but to all of the people that are in so much pain because of this loss. I honestly, Brian, I don't think this is a man who is frequently confronted by anybody. And I will tell you, he seemed a little shocked to have anybody challenging him, let alone one of his colleagues. But I think it's so called on. We need to speak directly to one another in this moment about the impact of what people are saying and doing.
We recently saw Donald Trump send ICE into Los Angeles, which is the city that I live in. That, of course, sparked protests because this is a city that's composed of a third immigrants, and he used that as a pretense to then be able to send in the Marines and federalize the National Guard. And so this is happening because, California, Los Angeles, this is a blue city in a blue state with a blue governor that Donald Trump likes to use as a punching bag. New Jersey is another true blue state. And so if and when this happens in New Jersey, what will your response be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just speaking to a friend of mine in LA who was working about a block from the ICE detention facility or the ICE center where the troops are on the street. And she was saying she's getting these calls from all over the country to commiserate with her about how horrible it is. And she said, we're not seeing the things on the street that Fox News is doing. The really scary part, though, is that we have armed troops in our streets, which, of course, is not the appropriate use of armed forces unless it's in the most extreme moment, right? And
which, by the way, is exactly what the police chief of the LAPD, which isn't exactly some liberal, not known to be some liberal force, has said as well.
Well, and what she was saying too is it seems as if it's creating a lot more work for the LAPD because now the LAPD are protecting the National Guard because the people in the street are very concerned. So they're coming out. So now the LAPD has more people out in the street so that they can ensure that there's that nobody, approaches the National Guard now. And so it's sort of, you have these layers of ICE who are armed people, and then you have the National Guard armed against ICE, and then you have the LAPD as a layer. It just starts to be chaos, which is exactly what the president wants and isn't an appropriate use, I would say, again, of armed troops, which is why as governor, I would really stand strongly against that, using the court systems to get them out of there. I think it's illegal what the president's doing. I would be working to hold him accountable for that. There is not an insurrection going on in the streets of LA right now. So he should not be using the Insurrection Act. He's not really delineated very well what he's doing. In fact, when Pete Hegseth was asked why he wanted to put Marines on the street, under what authority. He said the Constitution. He was asked what part of the Constitution. This is a document we use as a legal framework. It's not just a vibes document. We don't just say like, oh, it's like the vibe of the Constitution. He couldn't say what it was. So this is an administration that's out of control, that is trying to utilize power in inappropriate ways. And as governor, I'd hold them accountable.
And of course, to watch the full interviews with Tina Smith and Mikey Sherrill, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.